Welcome to Airway Breathing Conversation, a podcast presented by the anesthesiology residents at the University of Saskatchewan, created to provide individuals of all levels of medical knowledge with anesthesiology-related healthcare information. On this episode, we speak with Dr. Murray Dease, staff anesthesiologist and director of the Family Practice Anesthetology, or FPA, Enhanced Skills Program at the University of Saskatchewan, as well as Drs. Chelsea Wilgenbusch, David Boyle, and Nan Wu, 3 FPAs who completed their anesthesia training in this program, about what it means to practice family practice and anesthesiology concurrently in Saskatchewan and throughout rural Canada. Now, whether you are an anesthesiologist, resident, medical student, or member of the general public, come take a break with our host, Anesthesia PGY3 Alex Pellerin, and a multitude of brilliant and insightful guests as we demystify the incredible specialty that is anesthesiology, one episode at a time.
Okay, everyone, welcome to a very exciting episode of the Airway Breathing Conversation podcast. This is our first Zoom call. Very exciting. Alan has done an amazing job organizing this. And today we have, I would say, some of the most salt of the earth, nicest people I've ever met in my whole life. We have an amazing trio of family practice anesthesiologists who completed their training here at the Department of Anesthesiology under the direction of the program director of the FPA program, Dr. Dease. So today with us, we have Dr. Wilgenbusch, Dr. Boyle, and Dr. Wu. So maybe we'll just take a moment and I'll let you guys all introduce yourselves.
Okay.
And maybe say where you're from, where you practice now. And then maybe if you could give us a little tidbit into what your practice looks like, where you currently are. Yeah, Dr. Dease, do you want to start?
Okay, well, first of all, please call me Murray. So my name is Murray Dease. I'm the director of the FPA program. I used to be an FPA myself. That's the second most career thing that I'm proud of. I grew up in Hudson Bay, Saskatchewan. I did all my university and school here. I was a philosophy major. Then I did family medicine. I worked in Melfort for 3 years as an FPA, as did Dr. Wilgenbusch, and as is Dr. Boyle. I live in Saskatoon now. I went back and finished the program. So now I'm a 5-year staff anesthesiologist in Saskatoon. I have a wife and 2 grown kids. And the thing that I am most proud of in my career is being a part of this program and being able to meet these wonderful, motivated, brave, intelligent people that go off to do anesthetics in rural environments by themselves with only 1 year of training. I'm so proud of them.
Amazing.
Thanks, Murray. I'm Chelsea Wilgenbusch. I, as Murray alluded to, started my career in Melfort. I did full kind of scope family practice with family practice anesthesia for about 4 years. I did all of my training as well in Saskatoon, my family medicine, my family practice anesthesia. I grew up in a small town called Wilgenbusch, Saskatchewan. And in the last year, I've relocated to Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, which is more of a regional site. And currently my practice is full-time anesthesia.
Great, thanks, Chelsea. And I'm David Boyle. I'm originally from Kinistino, Saskatchewan, small town. I did my family medicine training in Saskatoon and then went and worked in Swift Current for a couple of years as kind of full scope family physician. And then we decided to move back closer to home. So planned to go to Melfort and stopped for a year to do the FPA program with Nan and Murray. And then now I'm working in Melfort, doing family medicine, merge, in hospital, anesthesia, a little bit of kind of whatever they'll let me do. And it's a lot of fun.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nan. I grew up back in China and I moved to Canada in 2009, finished my medical training here. I did my family medicine residency back in Newfoundland, and then it was one of the amazing programs that gave me chances to come to the north for 6 months. I did a 6 month of rotation in Iqaluit, And after graduating from family medicine program, I started my practice in Colorado. I actually worked here for 3 years before I decided to do extra training in anesthesia. So it was a great honor to be part of the program in Saskatchewan last year. After graduating from the FPA program, I came back to Iqaluit, and then now I'm mostly doing anesthesia working in Iqaluit, but occasionally I still pick up a emerge shift and family medicine clinic. Exciting 4-year first year of practice.
Amazing. Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone, for coming and introducing yourselves. Very, very much appreciated. I thought maybe we would start because we have a pretty wide array of listeners now. Thank you to our listeners. And I think that probably people don't really understand what a family practice anesthesiologist is. So I welcome any of you or all of you to kind of just like lay out what the training is like. You kind of already alluded to how you do family medicine first, but just kind of take our listeners through what that journey usually looks like.
Well, let me just hype it a bit before.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
Okay.
Hype it.
So I think a rural family practice anesthetist is hands down the most valuable individual practitioner we have in healthcare. A rural family physician provides for the needs of the entire community from birth to death. It has to take care of all aspects of all diseases, including trauma, pregnancy, all those sorts of things. And then you tack on an extra year of anesthesia training. And if you look at any of the graphs that show the law of diminishing returns, or starting any new task, it's always a very steep learning curve, and then it levels off. So, I'd like to think that we get the FPAs shot out of a cannon in that 1 year, and they get to the point where the law of diminishing returns starts to level off, and they get the most bang for the buck so that they can go back to the communities, serve the patients there, help out their colleagues. I think that the biggest benefit to having a rural FPA is having someone with those anesthesia skills in that community for emergency situations. As a person who grew up in rural Saskatchewan and as a person who travels through rural Saskatchewan, I always feel better knowing that there's FPAs out there to take care of me and the people I love if something bad happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like as a frame of reference for people, there was a very traumatic event that happened in Saskatchewan in the last 10 years, which was the Humboldt Broncos crash. And an FPA was specifically involved in the care of many of those patients and single-handedly intubated them, gave protected airways for the ability for them to be transported to Saskatoon for further surgery and management. So I think that you hit the nail on the head so well. Like having those anesthesia skills is so so valuable in a rural setting because trauma and emergency situations can happen anywhere at any time.
They don't discriminate.
Yeah, absolutely. Did anyone else want to add any hype?
Yeah, so I mean, just to kind of expand on the training piece. You complete your family medicine residency either in a rural program or a more urban site. And then, like Maria alluded to, you kind of come in with just your family medicine background, and then you try to marry that with the anesthesia program. And it's a whole new skill set. And yeah, when you were talking about kind of coming up on that, difficult phase, I kind of likened when I started the FPA program, felt like trying to climb like a wall that was made of glass, that was straight vertical, that was also on fire. And, the first probably 3 months of the program almost feels like you're just never going to kind of make it or get it. And you're just reading like crazy and working like crazy. And then, it is insane the kind of trajectory that you go on and towards the end of the program when you actually are like, I think I can do this in a resource limited setting. And then you get out to a resource limited setting and it's terrifying all over again.
Yeah, absolutely. David or Nan, did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
I can talk a little bit about kind of what it was training a little bit was like. And I also just want to apologize for my background noise. We were all set, and then just when we hit go, basically our neighbor decided it was a good time to cut his grass. So
100%.
I had to move from outside to inside. So I hope there's less background noise now. But coming to Saskatoon specifically, I thought it was great because we have our family medicine training where everything is so broad. You spend your rotations doing a little bit of general surgery, peds, family medicine, obstetrics. You spend your 2 years trying to become a jack of all trades, so to speak. But then we start the anesthesia program or the FPA year. And like Murray said, and Chelsea, it's a steep learning curve. So they throw us right in with the anesthesia team, where we basically join the group of anesthesia residents. We're treated just like all the other anesthesiology residents, except for, in a way, we just get to focus on anesthesia. So they still, have to do some of their off-service rotations. So we get to spend the whole year just hammering and packing in as much anesthesia as we can in that time. And after having spent so much time trying to learn a broad array of skills, it was really rewarding and a lot of fun to be able to tackle anesthesia, which is a broad area, but really just hone in on that for a whole year.
Yeah. So from my perspective, 1 year of extra anesthesia training. Let me see. How can I mute the echo? So for me, the 1 year of training is very short, and it does give us a lot of technical skills and to manage patients' airways, and give us a lot of opportunity to learn the vast amount of knowledge behind anesthesia considerations. It gave us a starting point to start our career, and then our learning just continues while we're still in practice. In 1 year, we pick up all the technical skills, and then the learning about all the considerations, still we accumulate all this knowledge while we're still in practice. And it's a great opportunity that I pick up so much knowledge while in practice with my colleagues. Yeah, so it's a very interesting program. It gave us a really, really good starting point to get on board with anesthesia. Very, very rewarding.
Absolutely. I feel so weird calling you Murray. I don't know if I can do it.
Right. It's up to you.
Okay. Could you tell us a bit about like the structure of the year that they come and train with the anesthesia department?
Yeah. So we get two different types of residents. Well, they become residents, I guess. We get students, residents right out of family medicine, which I think, Chelsea, you were like that, right? Yeah. And then we get other residents that have already practiced on their own for a while, like David and Nan did. It's probably most people come straight out of residency and do the year. So it's 1 year long. The majority of it is spent in the hospitals in Saskatoon. The 4 hospitals now, RUH, City, St. Paul's, and the JPCH hospital. 2 months are spent in a community hospital in Prince Albert. The residents spend all their time in the ORs doing typical adult and pediatric anesthesia. They spend 2 months on the obstetrics unit, learning how to do epidurals and C-sections. They do 1 month of ICU, and they do 1 month on our SPEC service, which stands for Safari Pain.
ECT consults.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe.
Okay. So it's not ECT anymore. So it's just
right. It's
SPC.
not ECT.
Yeah.
Yeah, SPC. The out of OR anesthesia.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a short year. It's there's a lot to learn in that short period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. And a jam-packed year, I can imagine, with a lot of critical care medicine, a lot of anesthesia, and then of course like obstetrics practice in there as well. And how many people have actually gone through the FPA program?
Well, that's a great question. When I did this program back in 2000, 23 years ago already, there was really no program. You just I remember I met with the program director at that time. We had a half an hour interview. He said, yeah, sure. And then I just kind of assimilated with the R2s. I was hands down the worst resident this program has ever had. For the first month or so, every night, I almost quit. It was awful. And then, like Chelsea said, something just kind of clicked. But at that time, there was no formal program at all. At the end of the year, Bill Mackay, who used to be one of the director of the education here, he just wrote me a letter, and I took it to the health district that I was going to work in. When I finished my 5-year program in 2008, I took over the FPA program, and it changed a lot in the next 2 or 3 years. It became a much more formalized program. It was under the umbrella or control of the family medicine, so we work closely with them. And now, if once you pass this program, you get a certificate of added competence that is recognized across the country. Yeah. So I think since 2008, we've trained 21 FPAs.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And they've gone all over Canada.
Yeah. The mandate of our program is to train people for Saskatchewan. And, that's what we try to do. But we always have to, my personal primary interest is always in the well-being of the resident. So we have, we got a couple in Melfort, Dr. Boyle, and then Dr. Steffens, a previous graduate of this program. Another graduate of this program was Dr. Vander Ross, who moved we trained him, he went back to Melfort, and then he moved to BC. Dr. Wilgenbusch, who's now in Moose Jaw. Stephen Loden is in Meadow Lake. Rebecca Epp used to live in Meadow Lake, but now she's practicing in Africa.
Oh, amazing.
Tanner Schatz, amazing guy, grew up in Humboldt, now practices there. Lisa DeGoye is in Yorkton. Naveed Robertson is in PA. And then we have one of our oldest graduates, Matthew Kwan, who's in Nunavut, and Nan Wu. And then we had another Nunavut connection was Iwe Hugh, who's now practicing in Ontario, with also Chris Ray in Ontario. And Rachel Duramsky, who is in the Maritime someplace. Sorry, I hope these people listen. That's why I'm listing everybody. I hope you know.
No, that's great. I'm going to tell them to listen.
Okay. We have Eleanor Huitmeyer. I probably murdered her last name. And Adam Mildenberger, who are in BC. Joel Buhier is kind of a roving guy. I'm not sure where he is right now. Kimberly Huang is also overseas doing relief work. And our current resident is Mark Bernacki. And one of our residents, Matt Johnson, finished the program, and he liked it so much that he stayed and became a 5-year anesthesiologist. He's currently working here.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Such from the names that there's many names I don't recognize. From the names that I do recognize, such an amazing group of people. Like, that's why I said that at the beginning of the podcast too. Like, literally some of the nicest people I've ever met.
They're fantastic people.
Yeah. You have a good eye. You have a good eye, Dr. Dease.
Well, it's not just me, but I'm very proud of these people.
So, Chelsea, what made you want to do FPA training?
To be honest, it was a lot of the time I spent with one of the FPA graduates that Dr. Dease was just talking about, Steve Loden. I did my rural family medicine rotation just when I was in medical school, and I went up to Meadow Lake, and that was kind of the first exposure I had to that type of practice where you could do, OR in the morning and clinic in the afternoon. And I just really liked the variety. I didn't really know that much about anesthesia. I just kind of liked his life, and I liked what him and his wife were doing there, and I wanted to be involved in that. And then I did some anesthesia electives in family medicine residency, and I actually went to Regina and worked with a lot of awesome anesthesiologists there. And I like to think I got more of an understanding of kind of the specialty as a whole. And yeah, I just thought that the skill set was invaluable. Like Murray says, if you're going to be practicing in a resource limited setting where, you're going to be thinking about transport of patients and, potentially providing in-hospital care for them before the transport, I thought that it was a really important skill set to have going out to rural Saskatchewan.
Amazing. I also did an elective with Dr. Wilgenbusch. She was my boss.
Fantastic.
So I did an FPA elective, and it was awesome in Melfort. It was so good. I cannot, for the medical students that listen, I could not speak highly of it enough. It was so great to see your practice and see how diverse it was, and super, super cool. Also, I would say Dr. Wilgenbusch is just a really amazing, strong female mentor. So very lucky to spend time with her.
I like that you say I was your boss. I loosely barely had to supervise her. I was like, is she the
doctor? David, what made you want to go back? Because you have, I feel like you've done lots of things in your medical career. So what kind of drew you to FPA?
Yeah, so I was probably a typical family doctor kind of person in that I couldn't really decide what I wanted to do going through med school. Every rotation I did, I loved it. And every time I finished rotation, I decided that's the thing that I wanted to do until I started my next rotation. And then I wanted to be that. And I'd actually started off, I did a year of neurology residency of all things in Saskatoon and loved it. It was great. It was a lot of fun, but I missed the variety of everything else. So then I was with the help of Dr. Gary Hunter, who was the program director of that at that time. We had lots of conversations about it. He was very supportive of me switching over into family medicine. And then, so did that, went and worked in Swift Current and loved it. It was a great place to really try and figure out, how to be a doctor and manage things on your own. And we had a busy regional emergency department where it's one physician taking care of everyone. We had a little ICU there, and it was pretty exciting, but it was also very intimidating, especially for a brand new grad coming out of their residency program. And I had trained urban, so I'd spent some time in rural communities, but I'd had grown accustomed a little bit to having a lot of supports around. And then in Swift Current, we had some specialists, but none of them were in house. So in the emergency department, you were a little bit by yourself. And I loved the emergency room. I thought it was a lot of fun, very challenging, but also was probably the place that I felt the most uncomfortable. And then COVID happened. And so we all started talking about airways and different airway management and how to protect the patient and how to protect ourselves and all these different ventilation strategies. And all of this information was kind of like drinking from a fire hose. And I was realizing man, I really don't know much about this and found it very interesting. And then like Chelsea, I had some really good mentors. Dr. Richard Vandeross was in Melfort. I had spent, I think actually 3 months with him back in second year. We had a prep program that was basically just an exposure to rural family medicine. And I was going home to Melfort for the summer anyway, so I figured I might as well do it and you could get paid a little bit. And I thought his practice was pretty incredible. The fact that he was, he'd be in the emergency department one day, the next day he'd be in the OR, and he'd have a clinic day. And again, I thought the lifestyle was pretty cool. And then, but the real kicker for me was actually also in Meadow Lake, but it was Dr. Rebecca Epp that I worked with. And it was towards the end of my second year of family medicine. And so I told her, if we have any traumas or any codes, I want you to call me because I want to get more experience with them. And so she did. And we had a few of them when we were there. And every time I was just amazed at how we walk in and it seemed like it was chaos. And then it just got controlled when she was there. And she knew her algorithms of ATLS and managing someone's airway and obtaining vascular access on otherwise difficult patients. And she just off the top of her head knew all these sedating and intubating and resuscitation doses of everything. And I was like, wow, this is like what I think of when I think of a really cool rural doc that just has everything off the top of her head. And remember, she talked me through it many times and wrote them down. And no matter what she did, it wouldn't stick. So I thought maybe with a year of experience, I might remember a few things. So fast forward to Swift Current. We're doing COVID. We're doing the emergency room. I'm starting to get more interested in critical care. And then my wife and I become pregnant. And our whole family's back at Kinistino and Melfort. And we decide, you know what? We're starting a family now. We want to go and move to Melfort. So at that time, Dr. Wilgenbusch was there. So I reached out to her and I said, hey, I'm thinking of coming. And basically, I want your life. I want what you have. I want to do that. And she's like, oh, well, how convenient. I'm maybe thinking of going to Moose Jaw. So we made a little idea and it worked out really well. And so I was lucky enough to get to come to Saskatoon for a year and then tour back home to Melfort. And that was my journey of kind of how I've come. And my wife says I don't get to do any more residency programs. She says 2 or 3 of them was enough.
I feel you on that one. My husband too is like, no more university, right? You're going to be for sure done when this is done. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Lifelong learners though.
Yeah.
Even though you're done, just as you guys were mentioning in your practice, like there's always like new stuff, new updated guidelines to learn, new strategies. So absolutely. How about you, Nan?
So I started my practice in Nunavut, and I'm always very interested in acute care. So there's quite a limited of support in Iqaluit, being in a very northern isolated community there. The closest tertiary center is 3 hours away by flight to Ottawa. It's like 3,000 kilometers away. So a lot of times in the emergency department, we have to stabilize the patient and secure the airway before we transfer them on the flight, medevac them down to Ottawa. So I'm very interested in emergency care, and then we did have a lot of acute sick patients that need to be resuscitated. So I worked there in the emerge for almost 3 years, and then I feel like I always want to learn a little bit more because there's only so much. You kind of like knowledge gradually plateaued before you enter into some of the structured learning programs. I'm thinking about doing either emerge extra training or anesthesia training. So what triggered me doing it is there's one day we did have a patient that admitted under me for cholecystolithiasis. Now we do not have ERCP capabilities here, so the patient has to be held waiting for the medevac for the next 9 hours before it become available. Then we'll send the patient down to Ottawa for the ERCP. But the patient does have a background of cardiomyopathy and pacemaker, and then heart failure and just COPD. And then the patient just crashed. The blood pressure, when they sent from the emerge to the inpatient ward, they could not get the blood pressure. It's because they're measuring the blood pressure in the wrong range. The blood pressure was 60/30. So at that time, the other FPA also graduate from the Saskatchewan program, Dr. Kwong, he actually took the patient to the OR, and then they have to do the open surgery for him, and then drain the gallbladder and stabilize the patient, resuscitate the sepsis, and then intubate the patient and send him down to Ottawa. Yeah, so I was really amazed by how much knowledge he has, and then in resuscitating all the secure, very safe, sick patient. So Dr. Kwong said that I'm very interested in acute care and the resuscitations. Why don't you just try get your skills up to the next level and then try applying for anesthesia? I think about it, that is a really great opportunity. And Dr. Kwong really recommended me about the University of Saskatchewan program. It's amazing support, amazing learning program. So yes, that's how I applied it.
Amazing. Those are all such great stories. That's incredible.
Yeah.
I think it just really goes to show the importance of like mentorship in medicine,
Mm-hmm.
and how your interactions with people who are your staff or supervising you really help shape what you end up doing. Yeah,
I think people use the word humbled incorrectly a lot. I am truly humbled by this, but these people make me humble. The things that they do,
absolutely.
yeah, with little support, little resources, and no way out. we usually have to just, get ourselves to the next shift change.
Yes.
But there's no shift change when you're in Nunavut.
Yeah, no kidding.
And the happy ending of the story is the patient was sent down to Ottawa ICU and on 3 different pressors and on dialysis for quite a while, for several months, and eventually it was off dialysis and came back to Nunavut.
Fantastic.
It is a small community, and his daughter is actually internist, working in Ottawa, and then regularly coming up to Nunavut to do the internal medicine.
Fantastic. That's amazing. You guys all kind of alluded to the fact that it's sort of a whirlwind year and there's lots of learning. It's a really steep learning curve. I'm curious as to what things you would recommend for someone who's going to be coming into the FPA program. Like, what are your survival tips, or what can you say to someone to help get them through this like really daunting year, but really rewarding year?
Well, I made a mistake one time. So Richard van der Ross was this seasoned South African rural GP. These guys are fearless. They know how to do everything. And he's actually the guy that took over my practice in Melfort. And he wanted to do the FPA program. And I told him, Richard, don't worry about it. You'll do fine. Just show up. So poor Richard came on, and he hadn't done any background reading. And it became readily apparent early on that I had made a terrible mistake and I gave him terrible advice. So since that day, when every resident has been applied to the program, I've told them this is really hard and it's really fast, and you have to show up knowing your stuff. So we recommend a particular textbook, and I asked them to kind of read through it and get familiar with it, and expect to have your hair blown back for the first couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Can I ask which textbook you recommend?
Morgan and McHale.
Morgan and McHale.
Yeah.
That's my favorite textbook.
There's nothing in that book that you don't need to need, and there is a need to know, and there's not many things that aren't in that book that you need to know. It's a great book.
Mm-hmm. Very much agree.
Yeah, so that was going to be the textbook I alluded to, and I'm pretty sure I got that textbook from Murray scaring the shit out of me in my residency interviews. He does. He definitely, no one comes into this program not expecting to already have been reading over the summer. So yeah, read over the summer. I would say Morgan and McHale's survival tips. I mean, coffee.
Key, essential.
I honestly think just leaning into it and not being afraid to ask questions, not being afraid to act look stupid. I always tell the residents to really kind of tailor the experience to what they really want to get out of it. And, if you're going to be in a site that does a lot of trauma, I say, even if you're nervous, carry the trauma pager every time you work. The anesthesia residents will happily give it to you. But yeah, I think just kind of recognizing that it is a really supportive program. The other anesthesia residents, there are plenty of them I still talk to, and I still, will text them for advice, call them if I have a difficult case. So I think just the more that you kind of lean into it and ask for support and just embrace the whole process and trust that even when you're climbing the fiery wall, you're going to get to the other side. And that you have people there who really want you to succeed and want to help you. I think those are the most important things to kind of keep in mind on those tough call shifts or tough cases.
Yeah, I think that's very good advice. And I can also echo that Murray also put the fear of God into me. And so I also was frantically reading Morgan and McHale, trying to absorb as much as I could before hitting the ground running. And it was time well spent for sure, because like you said, it's a busy year and you think there's going to be a lot of time to study during the year. And there's time, but there's not much, because you're in the OR all day and then you're prepping for your next day's cases in the evening. So if there's not all that time to just go through the textbook. So it's definitely useful to have some background knowledge ahead of time. Morgan and McHale can seem a little bit daunting if you're someone that has had very little anesthesia experience before. Like for myself, I hadn't done many electives or anything in med school or residency because I never thought anesthesia was somewhere I was going to end up. So I actually started with the Ottawa Anesthesia Primer. It's usually what I think the anesthesia program recommends to the students when they're going through. And I found that was a really good intro for me. I read that first, so I could at least understand what some of these medicines like propofol and things like that, what they actually were and what they did and stuff like that. That was a good place to start for me. One thing that I want to echo that Chelsea said was really lean on your co-residents. You are, as an FPA, sometimes you feel a little bit outside because you're in this program with a whole bunch of 5-year anesthesia residents, but you are part of that group when you're there, and everyone is so supportive and so helpful. And like Chelsea said, they're going to be your colleague forever. They're people that I still text or call when I have questions, whether it's just a case I haven't done in a while or maybe a case I've never done before. And they're really good sources of information, and they're also good shoulders to lean on, because it's a tough year for everyone, even for those people that have 5 years to go through it. It's still a grueling process for them. So it's nice to have people that are going through the same thing as you. And then I'd also like to add that if possible, it'd be nice to have a FPA mentor, someone who's gone through the program relatively recently is helpful. Like for myself, I really leaned on Naveed Robertson and Chelsea going through, asking like, hey, I'm at 3 months. I feel like this. I don't think I'm ever going to get it figured out. How did you feel at 3 months? Am I supposed to have it figured out by now? And they were very, very helpful and just being like, no, it's okay. You'll get through it. You're where you're supposed to be. This is how I was feeling at this time. And they were just invaluable resources. They were so helpful. So I'd really encourage people who are going through the program to reach out and if you're not from Saskatchewan, you don't know any of us, find an FPA mentor. And I think Murray Dease knows where we all are, so he can always share our contact information with someone he thinks would be a good fit for you.
Yeah, I definitely agree with David. And it is very stressful for the first 7 months, and gradually getting used to it. And then finally you feel like, you get a little bit handle of it. I think it's expected that they will find it very hard at the beginning. It's a different environment, new techniques you need to understand, and new knowledge we need to understand. So I think we just set the expectation, just pace yourself. A certain technical skills that you will eventually get it as long as you keep doing it. So we just keep in mind that the staff do not expect you to be excellent at the very beginning. So it's okay if we could not get the intubation done on the first trial. It's okay if we could not get the spinal in successfully. So it is okay. And then over the time, everyone will be good with those technical skills, and it just takes time and practice. So I think that's one thing that we, as a FPA at the start, we need to keep in mind about it.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to give yourself some grace. You're learning brand new information.
Be kind to yourself.
Be kind to yourself, which is something it's an affirmation I should say every day. Yeah, awesome. I know all of you have spouses. I do think that going through residency is like a team sport. I think you have to have, like you said, really good support within residency, other people in medicine who have gone through it. But I'm sure for all of you, I'm sure that your family was also a big resource that helped push things forward. Because David, I think you already had your little one, right?
Yeah, she was born in April, and I started in July.
Yeah, that sounds tough.
Poppy.
It was Poppy. It was a whirlwind for sure, and yeah, absolutely. It was a lot of work for me, but I think it was probably more work for my wife because she was like, so she's a pharmacist, and so she took a mat leave, and then she went from, working her job and having a life with me to almost, in a sense, I don't want to say being a single parent, but it was pretty close. She was doing everything for that year, and my availability to be physically there was limited because it is such an intense year. And I mean, the program is super supportive, and I still got to get some time away to spend with my family. And I'm also thankful that I got 3 full months before I started the program to kind of get things settled and spend some time with them. But yeah, for that year, my wife Emma was very, very busy taking care of Poppy, and that was couldn't have done it without the support from her for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And Dr. Dease, your kids must have been. Well, were they born yet when you went through your FPA?
They were not. My wife is the best thing that ever happened to me by far. She followed me she grew up in Saskatoon. She followed me to Melfort. We had some very dark days then. Both of my kids were born within 17 months. So we had 2 kids in diapers for a lot of it. We were very short of GPs at that time. I was completely and utterly overwhelmed. If there's anybody from Melfort listening in this healthcare system, I'd like to sincerely extend my apologies. I was not myself. I was kind of a jerk at a lot of points, and I'd get complaints from nurses, and it was just because I wasn't well. It was not a sustainable environment for me. And that's why I have such admiration for these guys that are available to
100%.
sustain this.
100%. Yeah, and I think that speaks to an overarching theme actually in medicine. When you look at people's behavior, it probably has like nothing to do with the person that you're actually interacting with.
Yeah.
And it's probably because they're going through something, and maybe we should ask people more often like how they're doing.
And burnout is
burnout's
big thing,
real,
especially for these guys. They're often isolated.
Mm-hmm.
It's better now with social media and stuff, but having support and somebody to talk to is very important.
Yeah. How are you guys proactively? Because like burnout, I think is a very.
We didn't let Nan talk about.
Oh yeah, Nan.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, Nan. You should tell us.
Oh yes. So sorry. So I didn't have my baby at the time when I go through the training. I don't know how David could do it. Yeah, since I got a baby, there's no sleep at all. But anyways, a big thanks to my wife, and she actually followed me to Nunavut, and then followed me to Saskatchewan. And she was working remotely at the time, so both of us are quite busy. But we take days off, and then we have trips to the Rocky Mountains during the programs, and we have trips back to Ontario to see our family. And I think that just get us through it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, amazing.
I do find the staff is very, very supportive, and after each day of the OR, and you feel more or less not tired, but you feel refreshed because of I thank you very much. You had such a nice day, and it's a good experience. So it does make a big difference. You're not struggling through the program, and you're enjoying it. it does make a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chelsea, you had your kiddos after residency, but I know you've been with your partner for a really long time.
Yeah, we have been together for 15 years. So he went with me through undergrad, medical school, both of my residencies, followed me to Melfort, followed me to Moose Jaw. He actually had a pulmonary embolus while I was in the anesthesia program.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Yeah, I was in half-day learning. I had left him at the hospital because I was post-call, and then I went to work in the morning, and he was in the ER department, and I was quite concerned about him. And then I, was texting with him, and the whole time he was just like, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm good. Don't worry about me. Got to go to work. Don't even worry. And then, I actually, he texted me and he was like, yeah, it is a PE, which is what I was worried that he had. And I remember kind of saying I had to go, and I just said I had to go. And it was Dr. Sterling was the one teaching us, and she kind of followed me out, and I broke down crying, and I had never met this woman. And she was so just helpful and supportive. And she was just go be with your husband. Don't worry about anything. Don't even think about anything. And it was a crazy time, and it was a crazy year, but my husband is the best, just the absolute best. But he's the rock that holds our family together big time. Currently a stay-at-home dad, way better stay-at-home dad than I could be a stay-at-home mom.
Amazing. That is amazing.
You've been listening to Airway Breathing Conversation, a podcast hosted and presented by the anesthesiology residents at the University of Saskatchewan. Please note that while this podcast is run by healthcare professionals, it is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. We are very thankful to our guests for taking the time to share their wisdom with us this episode, and a very special thanks to you, our listeners, for tuning in. Don't forget to follow us and our associated USask Anesthesia accounts on social media. You can find all our social media links on our Linktree page at linktr.ee/abc_podcast. You can also find the department's social media links on their Linktree page at linktr.ee/usask_anesthesia. We'll see you next episode, but until then, stay calm, take a breath, and always remember your ABCs.